Welcome to this digital gathering of the Belong Collective. We are so happy that you are with us. The Belong Collective is an inclusive, Jesus-shaped community practicing the way of love for the good of all. If you would like more information about us, please go to our website at thebelongcollective.org. If you're new with us, there is a Connect tab, and there is a card there that we ask that you fill out so that we're able to keep you up to date on all of our online happenings, like our book club, our digital gatherings on Sunday, all of those events. While you're on the website, if you would like to support us financially, there is a Give tab, and you can do that right through the website. And we do have an online store, so there is some merchandise available in there, and you're welcome to check that out as well. We love to connect with you on social media, so please check out the Belong Collective on Facebook. There is actually a separate private group, and this is a place where we can connect with each other in this time of separation. So if you would like added to that, please feel free to email us either through the website or you can contact us through that Facebook page. You can also find us on Instagram at the Belonggram, and please just tag us and share what's going on with you. We love to see what's happening. Thank you so much for being with us today.
The Belong Collective has learned of an opportunity to bring some smiles to some seniors this Easter. The Salvation Army, of whom we've been closely connected with over the years, is organizing a collection of a whole bunch of items to go in Easter gift bags for seniors in local nursing homes. And they're asking for the community to contribute, and we thought we would ask our community to contribute large print word search booklets, small packs of tissues, lip balm, small hand lotions. The Salvation Army is also going to be adding magazines, socks, and an Easter card. All of these items should be received at their office no later than March 15th. And their office is located at 506 South 29th Street, Harrisburg, PA 17104. The Salvation Army is also asking for two specific things. Any items that are going to be purchased, please sign up so that they know who is getting what. And when you sign up on the website that I'm about to give you, you'll see that they're asking for people to gather and deliver these items in amounts of 25 or 30. So if you're going to get large print word searches, which I just bought 25 today online, I found a bulk amount of them. You would get 25. So don't go to the store and just buy like 5 or 10. You'll see in the link a list of the multiples of 25 and 30. So if you want to buy 50 of something, you would sign up for 2 multiples of 25. So anyways, the sign up link is at www.ttsu.me/TSA seniors. And we'll post the link on our social media pages as well. So we hope that you'll join us in this effort to bring some smiles to some seniors this Easter. Thanks so much.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Belong Collective. So glad you could be with us this morning. We are continuing our series titled Belong, where we're talking about our values at the Belong Collective. We've gone through a few of our values. You can find our values at our website and all the details under each value header to explain further who we are and what we're about. Today, our value today is non-judgmental acceptance of all. So let me read what that is about. Non-judgmental acceptance of all. God's ear leans toward those on the margins. We are reminded throughout the scriptures that God is a refuge for the oppressed. Furthermore, the ministry of Jesus explicitly includes those who were marginalized by their culture. Samaritans, women, tax collectors, prostitutes, etc. This emphasis on the margins continues after Jesus when Philip invites an Ethiopian eunuch into the faith through baptism, and when James declares that the truest of religion ensures a care for the widow and the orphan. As a community, we must ensure that we never become so inward focused we refuse to include and consider the voices of those at the margins. So when we say non-judgmental acceptance of all, what we're saying is that it's very easy for the church to overlook its call to the margins. It's very easy to be considering yourself or considering your particular circumstance than considering the circumstance of those who have little or who are poor or who are oppressed. If you never have to step outside of your privilege, your particular circumstance, to see someone else's perspective, you may never see the need. And so we desire to be a community that doesn't judge these people that ultimately in the time of Jesus would have been judged as sinners, cursed. Like, I could go on and on with all the ways they would have been judged. So when we look at people like Samaritans, these are heretics. They don't follow the right God. They've completely changed how God's supposed to be followed, in the sense of God's not supposed to be followed on that mountain. He's supposed to be followed in the temple. So therefore, we don't associate with them. They're terrible. They're evil people. So we're just going to pay them no mind. That's not Jesus' approach. When you think about women in that day were seen as property. And Jesus instead says, no, that's not how I'm going to view women. I'm not going to marginalize them. Rabbis would not talk to women the way Jesus talked to women, allowed them to speak to him, ask him questions. There's so much Jesus does to give humanity to people, even prostitutes within that culture who would have been the farthest of the far in so many ways. He brings dignity and sees the image of God within them. And so we desire to see the image of God within people. But one of the things I want to talk about today, I don't think it's a hard concept for us to say the church should be about the poor. Those are the margins. Now, I think it's an easy thing to say. I think it's a harder thing to do. And I just want to speak tactically for a moment, okay? I have not been in ministry long, but I've been in ministry long enough to know some things. Just so you know, I've been in ministry for 15 years, probably plus, in the sense of paid vocational ministry. I was a part-time youth pastor while I was in college, finishing up my undergrad. And ever since then, I've had a pastoral job of some kind ever since then. So thinking about that, one of the things that's interesting is that the church will always emphasize its call to the margins and its call to the poor. But the question becomes, what happens when you actually look at the receipts for that statement, the emphasis on it, the reality that, like, this is a critical thing. This is a Jesus emphasis. This is something James emphasized. This is something that was emphasized after Jesus left. This is something that the Church of Acts had everything in common. They were literally selling houses to take care of poor people. They were selling their property to give to the church so that the church could then support poor people. People who are widows, who are orphans, who were not able to feed themselves. Like, the church's call in society was to reflect the love of Jesus by literally taking on the cares and concerns of others. And so when you look at the receipts for some churches, and I'm not just trying to throw churches under the bus, I'll say I've been in churches who were guilty of this and I didn't know how to remedy it. So I'm just going to say this, like, I'm not saying I know the right answer for these people in these churches. I'm just saying it's something to be considered, that for many churches, the building they meet in every Sunday requires somewhere around half of their budget a year. That's difficult. And it's difficult for me because I'm currently shooting in a studio in my basement. But whenever we go back to physically gathering again, I would love to have a building to gather in. I would love to have, whether it's a rental space that we have, whether it's something, even if we meet there just once every Sunday, or it's a space we can actually have and keep set up. I think there's ways to maybe do it where it makes sense financially, but the truth of the matter is it costs money, and it tends to be a significant portion of the budget. And then when you begin to see, or you begin to sit in financial planning meetings for church, which you have to do, you have to plan how you're going to spend your money, your budgeting and all of that. This is good stewardship to do that. whenever you emphasize, hey, we should do something really bold, like I once said, I think we should cancel church on Sunday and we should go out in our community and we should serve our community tangibly. We should set up different stations for our entire church to go out and serve in our community. It's something that ended up happening, okay? We ended up doing that. It took a year for us to do it. And part of the concern leading up to that, and even prior to whether or not we should do that or not, was will people tithe or, give on a Sunday where they're going out and serving the community instead of being inside the church and being served? And how can our budget sustain that? Because we're also going to be giving money to each of these sites to serve the community. And it became this like, how are we going to make that work in our budget? It didn't seem like something worth sacrificing for or putting ourselves at risk for. When we say non-judgmental acceptance of all, this is also going to be tied to next week's value, which is this idea of generosity, that we want to be a generous space, that ultimately we desire to be a community that's generous, that gives compassionately to the needs that are around us. So I want to make it clear that this is tied to so much. It's also tied to acceptance, which we've already talked about with other values, that we accept people that the church traditionally hasn't accepted. But I want to land and emphasize a little bit today on one particular character and then a little bit of who Jesus is. So we know that Jesus accepted tax collectors. This is incredibly bold of Jesus in his time. Not just that he accepted tax collectors to follow him, but then he shared meals with tax collectors. But then he's coming into a particular town, and when he comes into this town, he shares that he desires to meet with a particular person, and the person he meets with is actually a tax collector. Many of us know this story. It's the story of Zacchaeus. It's a pretty radical story. I actually got to go to Israel and got to be on the Jericho road where this story is told and told to be. And there's a tree there. It's not the actual tree, but it's the tree of memorial of this particular, the one that, Zacchaeus would have climbed or whatever. At least it's kind of a tourist, spot in the generally believed area where this story could have happened. I want to be clear. I don't know that this was the spot, but I read the story from the spot. And so instead of me reading it to you now in my basement, I figure, we'll transport a couple years ago to when I was in Israel, and I'll read you the story at the very least closer to the actual place that it happened than I am right now. So I'm going to roll that clip. We'll watch that, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So we're standing at the tree that they believe is the tree where Zacchaeus climbed as Jesus was passing by. The story goes this way. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man there by the name of Zacchaeus, he was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." All right, so a few points about this story that you just heard me read. Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector. This means he's a tax collector above other tax collectors. And one of the very interesting things that happened in Rome is they would place these individuals like Zacchaeus in positions of power to where they would turn on their own people and they would go extort money from their own people. So imagine that happened to you. Imagine for a moment that, not to get political, but we'll just say Canada comes down, occupies America, and in doing so, they coerce me into being a tax collector, and I decide to be a tax collector, and I have to go knock on my neighbors' doors and tell them that they're going to pay a huge amount of taxes, and they're going to pay that tax to Rome, but then I can extort above and beyond that for my own personal gain and the personal gain of my family or my fellow tax collectors. I do that enough, and I'm not going to be a very liked character. I'm going to be considered a traitor. As that time goes on, years and years and years that I do that, I am going to build up a certain level of disdain within my community. People don't like Zacchaeus. Very important that you recognize that people have made judgments of Zacchaeus. Here's what I want to say, though. The judgments people have made of Zacchaeus are okay. He's acting in an evil manner. He's acting in a way that is like killing people. Quite literally, people are probably starving. People are going hungry, being economically exploited. And then even if they refused to give taxes, would have been violence would have come on them and their families. So what Zacchaeus is doing and the system that he's a part of needs to be called what it is. It's evil. Making that judgment is not a problem. The struggle becomes, in our world, what we typically do is we make a judgment of the system or the actions and maybe even the characteristics of a person. And we begin to use words that make it sound like that person is no longer redeemable, or that the image of God is not within that person. Jesus does not have that approach with Zacchaeus. What's interesting is Jesus enters the town and he can meet with literally anyone. There's also like a lot of religious people in this town, a lot of Pharisees, a lot of, Sadducees, a lot of people who would have been in high ranks within the religious system that would have already had their house set up, assuming that maybe the rabbi would choose them. But instead, he says, Zacchaeus, come down from the tree immediately. I must stay at your house. I must. Kind of reminds me of him saying, I must go through Samaria. It's like, I came to shatter the way that we do these things, the way that these boundaries and barriers around race or around religion or around even the socioeconomic realities of our world. That does not mean he's condoning Zacchaeus' actions, but he chooses to go eat with him. Now, this would have frustrated people. When we talk about like the world we live in now of cancel culture, like people would have canceled Zacchaeus, and to see Jesus accept Zacchaeus, or at the very least, like offer him the dignity of eating with him. That's a pretty bold move by Jesus. He's not making a lot of friends doing this. But hey, maybe he's going to go tell him that, he needs to change his ways. And that's what's going to happen. But all the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. How could Jesus not go to the most holy house, but go to literally the chief of the tax collectors, the worst of the worst traitor? Jesus goes and eats with that person. And we don't get a whole lot in the story. It doesn't say Jesus sat down with him and condemned him and told him that he's going to hell if he keeps this up, that he's incredibly evil, and that if he doesn't change his ways, he's destined for eternal hellfire, or he's destined to live a life of meaningless. Like, he doesn't go into this like gloom and doom, at least that we're told in the scripture. Maybe he did, but we're not told that. What we're told next, after he says he must go eat with Zacchaeus, we're told next that he came down and welcomed him gladly. And then from there, Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." This is a conversation about economic justice from someone who has done evil in the world that he lives in and the economics within that world. He's exploited people to the point of maybe even death. Not maybe even, in this particular case, death. People were in poverty. And Zacchaeus says, because of the dignity shown me by this man, this rabbi who allowed his reputation to be sullied to eat with me, that it gave Zacchaeus maybe a glimpse of his own humanity. Maybe he felt redeemable. Maybe this was the first person in his lifetime or in a long time that actually saw him. It's hard though, right? Because right now what I'm saying is I'm saying all these things that are giving you a sense of compassion for Zacchaeus, a sense of understanding for his story, a sense of understanding for what maybe the ways he was hurting. But at the same time, I want you to remember, everything Jesus is eating in that house while he's eating with Zacchaeus is the product of extortion. And there's people, rightfully so, on the outside, maybe even considering canceling Jesus now that he's eaten with Zacchaeus. Because how dare he eat with someone who's economically extorted people to the point of poverty and death even. The way of Jesus is not the way of cancel culture. That's not to say the way of Jesus lacks accountability. And this is really important. And this is in our world where I think we're in this struggling point. When we talk about non-judgmental acceptance of all, the reason I want to emphasize the tax collector in this story is because it's a role that was inherently wicked, but Jesus was interested in saving people from that system of wickedness that they had bought into. That system of evil and exploitation that they had and even greed that had so captured their heart, that he wanted to rescue Zacchaeus from that. He wanted to rescue Levi from that. He ate with all of these tax collectors because he wanted to show them another way was possible. I think it's amazing, though, also that Zacchaeus, this transformation is real. It's not just a publicity statement to make sure he keeps his followers on Instagram, right? He's saying, I'm going to give half of all I possess, and if I cheated anybody out of anything, which is hilarious, he's cheated everybody out of everything. I mean, everyone he's come in contact with in his world, he's cheated out of stuff. He says, I'll pay it back 4 times the amount. What Zacchaeus recognizes is, I have a lot that I have to repair. I've broken a lot of people. I've hurt a lot of people, and I have to begin the process of repairing that. This is a form of reparations right here in the Bible. Trying to make whole the parties that he defrauded. It's wild, but Jesus doesn't tell him to do it. He comes to the conclusion because Jesus sat down and had a meal with him. Jesus saw the image of God within Zacchaeus. And there were so many that overlooked the image of God within him prior to Jesus. And it's hard to discredit those people because they were in such a tough circumstance. But what we can say about those people, even though their judgments about what he was doing being evil may have been right, were right. To shut out that person, even in the midst of their wickedness and brokenness and adoption of a broken and oppressive system. To shun those people, to push them out, does not seem to be the way of Jesus. See, Jesus wanted to transform the economic system that was hurting all these people, but also the people who had bought in to being the oppressors within that system. Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost." Zacchaeus was lost, and salvation came to his house. I think this story is incredibly powerful when we think about non-judgmental acceptance of all. Because, to be clear, non-judgmental acceptance of all does not mean we never make judgments about systems, about actions, about, like, if I tell you, for example, meth is bad for you, doing meth is bad for you. That person did meth and it's bad for them. Or, just something that's so obviously wrong, right? I can do that while also having compassion and care for the person who's in that system, in that sickness of drug abuse, the person who even maybe in selling that. Like, imagine that. Jesus shows up at the drug dealer's house in the town and eats a meal with the drug dealer who's responsible for all this brokenness in the community. That's kind of what Zacchaeus is like. See, what we can say is we're allowed to make judgments. Jesus makes judgments. Actually, there's just a few chapters before. Here's some of what Jesus says just a few chapters before in Luke chapter 11. "Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness, you foolish people." Whoa, sounds like judgment to me. "Woe to you, Pharisees, because you give a tenth of your mint, rue, and all other garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you love the most important seats in the synagogue and greetings in the marketplace. Woe to you, because you are like unmarked graves, which men walk over without knowing." He goes on and on. It's actually known as the 7 woes. He says a lot. And it's very judgmental. And it's all very true. It's all very true of the characteristics of those people. See, we can have our judgments and they can be true. But a Pharisee also came to Jesus, Nicodemus, and he invited him to follow him. He didn't shut him out. He didn't say, "This isn't for you because you're a Pharisee and you're wrong, or you're evil, or you're part of a broken system." No, he accepted him. And so what we say is the image of God in people. There is no judgment we can place that removes the image of God within someone. There is no judgment we can place on someone that makes them wholly irredeemable, because the grace of God is for everyone, even and especially the most far off, especially the ones who have committed to the most wicked and oppressive systems, especially the ones who have done evil that will take their lifetime to even come close to making right, if it's even possible to do so. Jesus models for us this love and openness that refuses to cancel people, but does not refuse to hold them accountable, does not refuse to speak truth to the powers around him. This is a very fine needle to thread here, right? Because there's times where I get it wrong. There's times where I'm like, that person is so messed up, blah, 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 blah. And they are. What they're doing is wrong. But the words I'm saying and the way I'm saying it is a way that ultimately is removing the image of God from that person. That's saying things like that person's irredeemable, or that person can't change, or that God can't change that person. Let's not speak so low of the power of God in someone's life and the power of God's grace and love on someone, and that love can be extended by us. That even as we love one another in like this radical Jesus type way that sits down with the tax collector amid Twitter and Instagram going crazy and saying, why is he eating with this guy? Like, why in the world? Like the buzz of the town would have been saying, he can't do that. Jesus knew that was going to be the response. He didn't let that lead the way he loved. Instead, he knew that the non-judgmental acceptance of all that are made in the image of God was part of what he was teaching us that being human and being like Jesus is to refuse a cancel culture that so easily writes people off. So may we hold people accountable, people who are in leadership, people who have influence. Let's speak truth to power. I'm all for it. But let's not give up on people. Let's not say people can't change. Let's not say God can't get a hold of someone. Let's not criticize people who are compassionate to those who even are evil, because who knows what God can do to open up that person's spirit when they experience compassion. This is a hard one. It's a hard one for me. I'm confident it's a hard one for you. Wrestle with it. Chew on it a little bit. There's times when I love the 7 woes Jesus way more than I love the Jesus that would meet with Zacchaeus. This is the tension of Jesus. Like, it's okay to live in this tension. I think the challenge for us is how we love well in our world. We want to be a church that loves well. We want to be a community that is known for how we accept those at the margins who are at the lowest of low in their circumstances, and those who are at the margins at the lowest of low because society has completely written them off, whether that was deserving in the sense of they really hurt a lot of people, or whether that's just simply a position of status that's been made up by the constructs of a society. We believe like Jesus ministers to the margins, and we should too. Let's pray. Good and gracious God, give us the wisdom, give us the strength, give us the courage, give us the love, give us the grace to minister well to the margins. God, that we would see those at the margins the way you do, that our heart would grow, and that compassion would flow. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's digital gathering. We hope you have a fantastic week, and please feel free to reach out to us via our website or any of our social media platforms. Have a fantastic day, and thanks again.